there was one question. I don't know if there was another hand raised who would like to share before. I saw a question that I'd like to answer, and I also want to put it out on the floor. The one, I saw it coming through text. It was, sorry, the question was the distinction between a friend and an associate. Would you guys want me to answer that question before we continue with the volunteer who'd like to share the second one?
Yeah, maybe you should give a context about what associate is, so that everybody can be on the same, frame of.
Cool, because that is what I actually want to share. So actually, when you look at that's Who's on Your Table series. It's actually a series, and there's a part 2 of it, where Dr. Darius Daniels actually names it "We Are Not That Close," where he basically then speaks about associates. I can't find my notes here, but basically the way that he describes associates is in this way. An associate is a person who is a good person, a person that you frequently either converse with or you are in close proximity with. They're not evil enough, the way that he describes, they're not evil enough to be an enemy, but they're not safe enough to be a friend. And this is the distinction I'll basically make just from his book. So an associate is someone that most of the time we usually confuse associates and friends because they seem very similar. So if you think of a goat and a sheep, if you're not from the farm, you might not really see the distinction between a goat and a sheep because they're very similar, right? They even make similar sounds. So an associate is someone who will be in close proximity with you. Most of the time you spend most time with them, whether it's in a workplace, church, or like even with when you're in a group of friends, you spend a lot of time with them. But you may not have invested a lot of time to find out if they are the type of friend that you need in your life, or it could be you have spent enough time with them, but you assume that they're your friend, but they're actually not until you get to a point where that friendship is tested. So let's look at how we can actually distinguish between a friend. So first of all, what is a friend? So a friend, you look at their character. So they have to have unshakable character, because your friend's character will always become your crisis. The same way your character will become your friend's crisis. What does this mean? It means that if I have insecurity issues as a person, my friends have to deal with that insecurity. That is a character flaw that becomes their crisis, because that is something I deal with or struggle with. But if I'm a friend that is also compassionate, if I'm a compassionate person, again, that becomes the crisis. It might be a good crisis, but essentially my character becomes something that they need to deal with on a daily basis, because again, I'm their friend. And as a friend, there's certain levels of expectations that my friends will have of me versus an associate. So your expectations of a friend and an associate will be totally different. Your friend is supposed to give you unconditional love. I'm supposed to give unconditional love to my friends. It also means that a friend is supposed to give me unbridled honesty. And I actually spoke about this a few days ago, where your friends are supposed to correct and rebuke you. As iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens another friend. If I'm doing something wrong, the first person I expect to pick up the phone and call me are like my friends. I expect a lady to pick up the phone and say, Nelly, no. What you just did right there, nope, that's wrong. That is wrong. I'm not even going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. When you did this and this and this, or when you said this and this, that was wrong. That was petty. You need to fix yourself. And we talk about it because a friend is supposed to give you an open rebuke. In fact, the word says an open rebuke from a friend is much better than kisses or than flattery from an enemy, because that open rebuke is supposed to build you up. If you cannot accept honesty from a friend, then that person is actually not your friend, or you are not being a good friend to them because you're not accepting their open rebuke. And also it has immovable reliability. So a friend will be reliable. Like there's that type of reliability that you possibly cannot get anywhere else. And they also are always continuously encouraging you. So there are certain traits and there's certain things that you'll always get from a friend that you cannot get from anywhere else. And I think That's where we really need to be very intentional or very reflective about how we assess our relationships. When you are in a crisis, who's the first person that you call? If you know you're struggling with something, who are the people that you call? If you have very good news to share, who are the people that you call? Those people are people that you in your mind have already labeled as friends. And the same vice versa. But there are some people that you may think are friends but are not friends, because you may expect certain things from them, but they don't expect to perform that way. So I'll make an example. Let's say I am going through something and I pick up the phone at midnight and I call, I don't know, let me make an example of someone on the phone. Let me say I call Daniel. Daniel would be like, Nelly, why are you calling me at midnight? It's like that makes no sense. Like why? But that's because it's possible that we have not reached that level of friendship yet. And that's okay. But if I call another friend at midnight, they're like, okay, cool. So what's the issue? What can we do? Do we need to pray? Do we need to do this? That level of expectation, knowing who your friends are, knowing that I can call this person at this time and they know it's not weird. It's because I'm going through something, and they can actually wake up and pray with me. It's just learning what to expect from different people. And also there's another thing which actually comes to the loyalty test that Darius Daniels talks about. He says, if you truly want to distinguish between a friend and an associate, ask yourself this: if a valuable opportunity presents itself to a person, do they choose to harm you over that opportunity? If yes, then that person is possibly not a friend and they're an associate. Same way, if you are presented with a potentially very valuable opportunity, but that could potentially harm that other person, will you choose that opportunity over the person, or will you choose the person over the opportunity? If you're going to choose that opportunity, then that person you do not you have not labeled as a friend. You have possibly labeled as an associate, but you just have not necessarily you have not necessarily acknowledged them and acknowledged that fact. And I'd like to go to the second point where Dr. Darius Daniels talks about the assessment. I don't know if you guys can see my screen.
Nelly, can I just ask a question before you go to the next slide? So speaking of expectation, how then do you manage expectation from people who you just get to know, or people who you just get to have casual contact with? How do you get to manage expectation in friendship or relationship? When do you draw the line between an associate expectation of you and a friendship expectation of you? Maybe anybody can answer it.
I was about to say, can I not be the only one who speaks? We've got people who are very mature on this platform.
And also there's another question I think that also relates with my question from Brendan. He said, at which point do I assume my connect group acquaintances are my friends? I am making a friend. Is it not about give and take? So at which point do acquaintances, do his connect group acquaintances become his friend? So I think it's a little bit different. My question is, how do you manage expectation from an acquaintance, and how do you manage expectation from a friend? At what point do you draw the line that, hey, listen, you are an acquaintance and this is what is expected of you, or this is what is expected of me? How do you draw that line? I'm going to ask Sheldon. I think he's
this guy. I was going to give feedback now. Like personally, the way I would kind of draw the distinction between an acquaintance and a friend is the level at which we're sharing stories or things about our lives. So with an acquaintance, chances are I'm not going to tell him personal details about my life, about my family. I'll be like more light stuff or generic stuff. But a friend, I would tell them about things that are going on, like maybe family member sick, or like I went to go see another family member, because you have that connection. So then you'll be sharing a lot deeper stuff with a friend than you would a friend. That's how I would make the connection. That's how I make the distinction. So if they're sharing the same with me, then I know that they would see me as their friend and not an acquaintance. And then also vice versa. Then I would know for myself whether they are my friend or my acquaintance. Because I think the disconnect would come in is where if I see someone as a friend, for example, if I see you as a friend, but you see me as an acquaintance, that's when there's a mismatch. And then that's when like tension could come up in a relationship where one thinks they're giving too much and the other one is not giving at all. But yeah, that's my view. I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, thanks, Sheldon. I see this is raising up his hand. Or are you just...
Yeah, hey guys, no. This is dealing with this matter. Guys, this is it's a fundamental issue. Defining, because this is where, if you look at this resource that we're using here, it's the idea of intelligence. It's either relationships happen to you or you make relationships work for you. Now, I'm going to use another analogy. Pastor Andres preached on money matters. And there's a book which he released some years ago. And he says this in the book. Money either has power over you or you can make it work for you. Relationships are the same. I think too many of us are allowing relationships to happen to us. And that's because we are not strategic or intelligent about them. So the question that Brandon asked, that's a very good question. Let me answer it from my life. Many of you will know me, those that know me personally will know that I'm an extrovert. I'm an introverted person. Nothing fills up my love tank like meeting one new person.
Did you say introvert?
Extrovert.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard introvert. Sorry, please go ahead.
No. If I did, I apologize. I meant to say extrovert. So nothing fills up my love tank more than meeting someone new, whether it's in the area of my work, socially, on social media. I'm always excited to meet people. One of the things I've had to learn, and this is where I think all of us can relate, someone at some point in your life has disappointed you and hurt you because you expected something from them. Now, here's what I've found. When you do the analysis and the audit of your friendships, and I'll use an example that happened with me recently, where I graduated someone that's an associate. In fact, they're in a different category, which is outside of the scope of this meeting, but even farther than an associate. But because I like them, no, listen to me carefully. I like them so much, I graduated them. And then I started having unreasonable expectations of them. Now, naturally, because they were not a friend, they didn't reciprocate. And what happened? I got mad. I got irritated. I started, when we make this blanket statement, church girls. Yeah, no, you're hurt, dude. But that's not her fault. It is your fault because you didn't audit correctly. Now, here's what this book says. Love biblically, which is love everyone, including your enemies and your exes, by the way. Value people equally. But here's the difficult one. Treat people differently. Why differently? But that's not loving people. No. I love you. I just love you there. Another part of this book, in speaking about associates, the title is "We're Not That Close." So I think it's figuring out to love people without them being close, because what's the treating differently? The difference is access. And that's because access, unlike love is given, access is earned. I'll say this as my last statement, which for me really sorted me out in separating associates and friends. I have to be authentic to everybody, but I don't have to be transparent to everybody. So everyone gets the truth about me, but there's a difference in access levels. But it's not up to them to decide how close we are. It's up to me. That's why, to come back to answer Daniel's question then, I have to sit down and work out which level, what defines close to me. Because if I haven't, I'll always be a victim of other people that don't respond correctly. Yeah, but that person said, no, but that person was never your friend. That person is an assignment. That's another grouping. For those of us that are, especially in ministry and in leadership, there are some people you have to serve. You'll never get a dime from them. But the problem begins when I move that person from an assignment and I make them a friend just because they are friendly and they bought me lunch once. No, they're still an assignment. That's why I'll then get hurt. So when I know that I've misaligned is when I expose myself to hurt because I'm expecting too much from people. And what is a good way of restarting is I've got to sit down and work out what is for my friends, what is for my what's for my associates, and what's for my, I've got to decide those levels. And then every time I meet someone, Brendan, you automatically qualify as an associate that you don't need to earn. When I meet you, automatically an associate. But if you want to be a friend, you have to earn it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's so good to see.
Yeah,
that's so good.
The problem is in the earning. The problem is in the maturity levels. The problem is in the level of, what is this the term? Relational intelligence that a person may or may not have. So I guess the level or the extent of your interaction with any particular acquaintance or human being in trying to ascertain whether you want to allow someone to become your friend or you becoming their friend, it's the level of interaction that one needs to engage, and it's in the engagement that you actually find out or suss out, whether consciously or subconsciously, and depending on your maturity levels and their maturity levels, as to whether you actually end up becoming or being friends. And I think that not everyone in my Connect group I've realized is my friend, even though I'd like everyone in my Connect group and all the other Connect groups to be my friend. But I guess to what extent I engage or you guys engage with me will decide to what extent we become friends. And I think that's important, just to use the Connect group as an example. So as I look at all the pictures on my screen, I'm always trying to pick out who's my friends and who's not. So I'm just kidding, I'm just joking. But you get the idea. You get the idea, right? I mean, that's my perspective, and I mean that's just, I mean this talk or this sermon that Dr. Daniels has delivered. I mean, I've never heard him before, but I've actually made notes, and it absolutely blew me away because I've been in relationships and it's been tough. I've been hurt, and when he puts it the way he puts it, it blows your mind. And so I'm very keenly listening to what everyone has to say, and especially what Nelly has to say, because I find this fascinating. Thank you.
Cool. We have 2 questions I saw. So there's one from Flo and one from Dre. Can we have, Flo first and then Dre? And then I think maybe after they both ask their questions, we can, I don't know what questions you guys may have. Maybe we can then open the floor in terms of people who would like to answer both those questions. Cool. Lindy, you can go first.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so mine is not necessarily a question. I was just kind of adding to the previous question, which is, you know, kind of how you differentiate between associate and friends. And I just think one of the things that I've learned, I've also been exposed to a lot of people. Some of you guys know I'm a musician, so I meet people all the time and I don't remember most of their names, but they certainly remember mine, which is a bit embarrassing when somebody greets you by name and you can't, you know, remember where you've seen them, if you can even remember a face. But I think the thing is that you need to know firstly yourself, and try and figure out what it is that the people that are around you are drawing from you. Why are they here? What are they taking? Besides what you're gaining from them, what are they taking from you? Because when you can identify that, okay, this person actually sees me more as a mentor, or this person's actually latching onto me because they need a big sister in my case, or if you're a guy, they need a big brother, this person is actually trying to be my friend. It's a bit easier when you see that to then figure out where to place these people. The other thing is that what Dr. Darius said about Jesus and how he could identify in terms of the disciples who was what, is because I think he, at least for me, what I picked up was that I think he knew that, okay, this person is here for me in this space. And so therefore I can only expose this to them. I don't think, I don't know, I don't think most of them would have been able to handle seeing Jesus vulnerable if those people saw Jesus as a hero or as a teacher. You know, if somebody sees you as a teacher, it's very difficult for them to see you hurt or to see you weak. They probably, it might destroy whatever it is you've been building in them, whether it's encouragement or whatever the case. So I think it's very important to be self-aware as well. But then the last thing I'm just going to say is that before you upgrade people from associate to friendship, you might be ready to upgrade them, but they might not. And it's not to say that they're a bad person. Maybe they're just still checking you out too. Yep. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe they're not where you are. And so what normally happens is we tell ourselves, okay, well, this person is coming into my inner circle. And then therefore, because you've told yourself that you have this list of criteria that therefore my friend must take my call at midnight. I'm not taking most of anyone's call at midnight. I don't care how close we are. Don't call me at midnight. Do you know what I mean? But my friends, my close friends know that. But that's my criteria. Your criteria may be different. And I think that's where, if you learn how to be self-aware, it's then easier for you to read someone else's criteria, someone else's expectations, someone else, because you've learned how to read that in yourself. So I think before we start pointing fingers, let's be clear about who we are, what we want, how we see things, what we have to offer, what they are looking for. Because then I think after that, it's so much easier to then say, okay, I can then put GC in this box and I can put Nelly in this box. And I've just met Daniel. Hi, Daniel. You know, therefore, where does he fit? So yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that was a question or more of an addition.
It was never a question. Never a question.
Okay, cool. So Joy says maybe we can just read the question. So her question is, what do you do when friends don't meet your expectations and then you early terminate the friendship? I don't know if I am reading that question right. Does it make sense?
I think GC is raising up his hand.
Sorry?
GC is raising up his hand.
Okay, GC. GC?
No, guys, I'm squirming in my seat. I don't really want to answer it because I think we should have a conversation, but I'm not here to offer my opinions only. I think there are many views on the table, but I think just very, without answering the question, and maybe for me, this is the problem statement. And going back to my experience that I shared, which I'm sure all of us can look back to some experience somewhere, is when my expectations are not met, that's the very sign to show that I had misdiagnosed and therefore misaligned that relationship. Now, the very thesis of this resource is saying, but many of us end up terminating those relationships and missing out on a resource, because every relationship is a resource at some level. But because we allow hurt to happen and then early terminate, I then miss out on what I could have received out of that relationship at whatever level, and also what I could have given. And therefore, the very thesis of this book is that don't terminate, realign, so that you don't have to terminate. Every time you get that kind of sign that says, hey, I'm in the wrong place, it's time to realign, have a conversation, and realign that relationship and say, I clearly thought I was here, or this person was here, but I was wrong. But I can tell you now that one of the toughest things to do, if you are not intentional and intelligent about this, in other words, you have a regular audit in your life about this, is that it's difficult to admit. I'm talking about myself. It's difficult for me to admit that I'm wrong on people because I love people. One of the hardest things to have to say to myself is that we are not that close. Because then I'll say, but we had a good time when look at their messages, they sent me all of this. No, you are not being honest with yourself. But I'll leave it to someone else to answer, but I'm just saying the foundation of this book is saying that is, if it ends in termination, it shows that I could have done better because I had an opportunity to realign, but emotions got so high that I had to terminate.
Thanks for sharing, GC.
Okay.
I would love to hear Mark's view. Mark.
Yes.
Mark?
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi Daniel.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I think, everyone's shared a lot of wisdom here, and relationships are difficult. So pretty much at Discipleship College, there was a course at the beginning of the year called, it was a business course called How to Be a Superstar in Business. But effectively what they taught was 90% of the challenges in business are relationships. So, this is not unique to single life or dating life or married life or to friendships, okay? Relationships are complex, and, we are each created in God's image. And that being said, we created for a purpose to do life with each other. And I see it from this place of, everyone will always remember how we made them feel less than what we said sometimes. So pretty much in terms of being intelligent about our choices, I think, it's a daily choice to ask God for wisdom, ask God for, his leading in how to make those wise choices. I really am grateful to absolutely every person on this call for your honesty, because the truth is I get it wrong many a time, and we're all human, but I think we each have God's grace and God's mercy and compassion in our lives, and every day is afresh for us to rebuild and realign what we're doing. And thank you for setting this up. This is been an amazing and inspiring message that we watched on relational intelligence. But effectively, I myself, I'm going to buy that book and read it. I think myself and all of us have, room to grow. I like to lead myself daily in terms of relationships, friendships, and every encounter with people, just from a place of humility. And so it's pretty humbling, hearing everyone speak and me sitting here realize that, hey, hold on, I'm not the only person who struggles with these issues, because there are boundaries, and sometimes boundaries are in place for a reason. Some people are meant to be in our lives as a friend, other people as let's just say as a husband or a wife, a potential partner, other people only as an associate or a colleague. And I think really it comes down to us each day just examining our lives and just looking to God and just asking God to help us be wise, because hurt people is what's famously said. And I think it's like, give people chances, be compassionate with people, be encouraging and be loving with people. However, also use wisdom just in terms of, if something doesn't work for you, if something's crossing a boundary, speak up and say, hey, hold on, that doesn't work for me. And, I'm keen, as the book Relational Intelligence mentions, I'm keen to realign this and, refocus those boundaries, reset those boundaries, and for me, I think it's about communicating. Communicate what you believe, should be the right course of action or the right thing to be said in a situation. And yeah, I think if we could perhaps all be more graceful to each other. And remember, we created for relationship. God's plan is for us to do life with each other, not to be hermits. And getting back to the question, there's always going to be challenge in relationships. There's always going to be situations that will cross boundaries, but let's use wisdom in this. I hope that helped.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Mark. Yeah, Nelly, I think Felix and Felix, please. Sorry.
Yeah, so we've got Felix, we've got Andrea, and then we have a few questions. And they also, if you can also just look at the chat, guys, there's actually some really nice comments as people were talking. So yeah, can Felix go first and then Andrea?
Thanks for inviting me, Nelly. It's I just wanted to respond on the what do you do when your friend does not meet expectation. That will happen. I think GC made a good comment to say, look, you might have made an improper assessment or audit of the relationship in terms of where you are. But what do you actually do? I would submit that you need to accept that that event has happened and don't struggle with the fact that it has happened. Accept it has happened and try and move beyond that particular event. But then you need to then, secondly, continue with an assessment. Does that particular the unmet expectation leads to disappointment? Does it need you to forgive? What does it bring out to you? So if you have to forgive, and perhaps that may even repeat, open yourself to vulnerability to be able to say that, look, this may repeat, and then you need to pull from within yourself in terms of how many times do I need to forgive that person before I make peace with the fact that this person is not going to get it, is not going to meet my expectation. And you conclude that I must be at peace which will hate this particular individual, and therefore will not maybe move that person to the next box where the person is a friend rather than an associate. I hope I make sense.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for sharing. Can we please move to Andre?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about what he said about managing relationships. It's not about managing pain. So it's not a matter of we're trying to make sure that we don't get hurt. The point was to make sure that the people who are close to us are aligned with our purpose, because depending on how close someone is, that's how I understood, depending on how close someone is to you, determines how much they will impact your purpose and influence the decisions you make, and that kind of thing. So I also, like a lot of people have said in the chat, I don't think we should follow like the worldly view where you just cut people out of your life that are not serving you or not adding value to your life. We have to remember there's somewhere in the scriptures where it says the standards by which you judge people, you will fall to those same standards, or you will be judged by those same standards. So whatever we expect from our close friends and our associates and all these different roles, we have to ask, can we fulfill those ourselves? People must expect the same from us. If we want people to give into our friendships to a certain amount, then we must understand that people are gonna, it must be like, it must work both ways. So how easily we cut people out of our lives is how easily they can cut us out of their lives. Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. Thanks so much for sharing, Andre. Nelly, it's over to you.
Okay, I'm not sure, Dre, was your question answered adequately? Because I see they tackled the expectations question, but I'm not sure if it, because the question was, do I realign without communicating the expectation? Okay, I've been in a situation where I did not meet my best friend's expectation. which I did not even know that she had. Fortunately, she had the courage to talk to me about it, but I'm just wondering if I did not meet the expectation, if she just automatically put me as an associate without telling me, if I would be able to call her my best friend. Flo, I see you made a movement there. Was this question, does everyone feel comfortable with the question? Was it answered, or does anyone would like to add? You good? Okay, I'm trying to see faces.
Nelly, okay, so, hello?
Yes, we can hear you, GC.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, on communication, something that one of my friends always reminds me that I don't like to hear when they remind me is, especially as a man, dealing with females, especially the church females, those ones, is that communication is communication, even if it's not in the preferred medium or method. So by someone not telling you that they've downgraded you, they are inadvertently communicating that they are no longer where you thought they were, or where maybe you previously agreed they were. And I think just something else that I wanted to add from the previous comment is that that I wanted to correct about what I said earlier, or maybe add on to. That's, I've made a bad judgment. I realize that it's not always that you've made a bad judgment, but also that relationships evolve. So sometimes who was a friend or an associate in a certain season may not be in another season. And so it won't necessarily, the change or the need to realign may not always arise from a bad happening. It may arise from a decision because seasons have changed, or a continuous change, and people change. I change, my relationships will also change as I change and as I grow. And so just to add to that, but I think for me, what's important is if someone hasn't communicated, for me, that's the first sign to say, clearly we were not as close as I thought we were.
Okay, cool. So I see Arthur had one last question. And then can we move on to the second part? Because I think there's some people who really wanted the second part more than the second part of the discussion. So, okay, wait. Tene says he can answer Shay's question. Tene, can you go ahead? And then we've got one. Arthur is asking if we expect something without even setting an expectations on ourselves. I'm not sure if you guys understand that question. So Tene, can you go first? And then Arthur, can you clarify your question first after Tene? And then maybe we can answer that and then move on to the second part.
Okay. Hi, guys. So I think Shay's question was, how do you open up to someone after they've hurt you? How do you open up to them again? And yes, forgiveness is the first part of it. But what I've also realized is that just because you've forgiven someone, it doesn't mean that you are able to open up again to that individual. So in terms of opening up again, fair enough, you've forgiven them and, there are no grudges, but then that doesn't mean that you can still have that openness. I've been in that situation before. And what I can say is that it's after forgiveness, it becomes a choice. It becomes a choice whether, you really need to communicate with this person to talk about what happened, whatever it is, and you clarify that and you've got closure in your mind. And then after that, it's a choice that you need to make, whether, the possibility, because then the question is, I could possibly get hurt again or disappointed again. But the question really is, how much do you value that relationship? is it worth, is it worth being hurt, or is the possibility of being hurt greater or less than the value of what you previously had? And I think that's obviously something that I went through. And then you, by obviously talking and communicating with each other, with the person, and talking about what happened, you also gain some trust back in it. So so I think it's a decision that you have to make after forgiving someone, whether you can then trust them again. And it has to outweigh the benefit of the relationship that you've had or will possibly have. Definitely has to outweigh the possibility of being hurt again.
Okay, cool. Okay. I see there's a lot of hands that are being raised. Can we please move on to the next part, and then we'll circle back if we still have time. Is that okay? Cool. I'm just going to share my screen again. And the second part is really just on singleness. And of course, people who know me know I love Dr. Miles Monroe. And one of the resources he has is just speaking about singlehood. And he talks about, and there's this one book where he talks about the myth of singleness. And I would like us to basically talk about that, because when people think singleness, they think it's a marital status, and it's actually not a marital status. Singleness is not a marital status. The way that Miles Monroe defines it is being truly single means being separate, being unique, and being whole. And essentially, we should all strive or pursue singleness. And when you're married, you should actually still be single. And being single doesn't mean you're now, it's a marital state of mind. You are acting as a single person, but being single means that you're still separate, you're still unique, you're still whole, even in your marriage. And just to like break those words down, is being separate represents your freedom to influence others, or your freedom from being influenced by others or being influenced by external stimuli. So the way that, well, if you look at Romans 12 from verse 1 to 2, and it says, do not be conformed, verse 2 specifically, do not be conformed by the culture of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of the mind. And that's basically what separation means. It means you are not being conformed. And if you think about the hero's message that Dr. Mensah had on conformity versus transformation, we should not be conformed to the standards of this world. We should actually be transformed. And that's what being separate means. It means that I continually transform by the renewal of my mind. I do not conform to the perceptions and the cultures and the ideologies of the world. So for me, singleness should not be a marital status, but should be a state of being. And that basically means that I'm free from the influence of things that are not of the godly kingdom. And being unique means that I'm aware of my uniqueness, that God created me, Nelisa, the way that I am for a specific reason, for a specific purpose. So I have specific characteristics about myself that God put in me. So my personality traits are not a mistake. Those qualities that I have, they're not by a mistake. It's God intentionally blessed me for a particular reason. So I should be very secure in my uniqueness, and I should be so secure and also know that that uniqueness, who I am, God created me to fulfill a particular calling and to fulfill a particular purpose. And being whole means that if you think about a circle, so when God takes Adam and Eve, he says, let the two become one. It's two whole beings becoming one, not two half beings. You cannot take two half people, put them together, and think that you'll have a great marriage. It should be two whole beings. So it's a reflection of who I am, what I'm doing, and what I give. So who I am is my purpose. What I'm doing is my vision for the future, and what I give is the gift to the world. So it's my gift, my God-given gift that God has given me to give to the world. So even if you think about purpose is not about me. Purpose is about other people. So being whole is more about how I influence the world. Being whole is how God has basically restored me to become this human being that becomes a gift to the world and someone that is able to build into the kingdom. And one of the analogies that Dr. Miles Monroe puts is this. He says, if you want to make an omelet and you've got 2 eggs, you need to have 2 healthy eggs to create that omelet. If you have 2 rotten eggs, you have a bad omelet. If you even have 1 rotten egg, you still have a bad omelet. So if you think that you are going to enter into marriage not being whole, not being unique, not being separate, not being truly single, and think you're going to have a good marriage, then you're actually doing a disservice to your marriage, because one person may come and they're a healthy egg, but if you are the rotten egg, then all you're doing is creating a bad omelet. So our first pursuit should be true singleness in its full entirety. So before I even think of changing my marital status, I must ask myself, how am I as a friend? Are my friends okay with me being a good friend? And if not, then that possibly means I can't be a good wife, because the foundation of any marriage should be friendship. And I mean, we've got married people on the line, guys. Please correct me if I'm wrong, and please add on to this. But you know, something that funny enough, my dad always says is, if you mismanage your singleness, you're more likely to mismanage your marriage. So before I strive for marriage, how's about I look at my singleness first, and I focus on being truly single, and I make sure that I'm thriving in my singleness, so that when marriage comes, I do not mismanage that season, because I've been able to pass the first level of just singleness and friendship, and I've been able to basically be a good friend overall. So I think now we can actually have all the questions. So the friendship questions, the relationship questions, the single questions, we have all of them. We can basically have all of them here. And also, just to share the resources here, the 2 books that I think are really good. So there's the Relational Intelligence one by Dr. Darius Daniels. And then the Single, Married, Separating Life After Divorce is such a great resource just to look at what true singleness is, what marriage looks like, and if you have been through separation and divorce, how you can move on from that. And still, again, the overarching idea is we are all created to be single and to stay single, even if your marital status changes, to still maintain that singleness. So those are the 2 resources I would personally say, please check out. But yeah, any questions and answers? And again, I say I'm not an expert in this, guys. I'm still figuring out this whole relationship thing as well. So can we just open up the floor for people who would like to ask questions and also answer them? So I will not be answering all of the questions, because again, I am not necessarily an expert. Yeah.
Nelly, may I just can I highlight the ones that were on the chat that we haven't yet answered?
Yeah.
Would you like to do that now, or could we do them later?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So please, if I've left out your question, please holler. But this is what I've picked up. So number 1, I've got Shay's question: how does one open up again after being hurt by friends in the past?
Okay.
How does one open up again after being hurt by friends in the past?
Cherry, I would recommend Cherry. Cherry, you want to share something?
Sure. Caught me a bit of guard there. Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so as I said on the chat, that I believe that we need to forgive. That's what God instructs us to do. And also, there's a popular saying that goes, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, because we're only harming ourselves, and we're not meant to carry that bitterness and harbor bitterness in us, because it's going to destroy our own well-being. So yes, so I think we should forgive the person, but sometimes it takes a long time to get over hurt, if we're honest. And sometimes it's a process, and sometimes it's a process that we need to go through. And the way I see it is that if we are hurt by the person and we continue to be in the, but okay, so if you're hurt by the person, but we've forgiven the person, but we still want to remain close to that person. It just creates like a platform or a ground for like those feelings of hurt to resurface, and you're always reminded of it. And also, I think sometimes God purposely removes people, or not removes, certain people are not meant to be with us in a certain season, right? So, to answer the question, I think that moving on doesn't necessarily mean that we maintain a relationship or friendship with that person. We should still forgive them, and the hurt will, it's a process. The healing, or to overcome the hurt, is sometimes a process, and a lot of value can be found in that process of healing, I think. Sometimes, like GC said earlier, people change, and maybe they're in a space that they can't be with us on this path now, but maybe they will also like change, and at a later stage you can come together with that person again and realize that you have a similar vision, or you headed the same way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Kerry. Thanks so much.
Yeah. I see Felix has his hand up. Would you like to answer that or add to that?
Yeah, actually, I'll possibly just talk to my life experiences on this one. I've had experiences both, or church world as well, in my personal life growing up, where I've trusted people, friends, as I assumed they were, and in all of the cases where you find that the person has stabbed you at the back when you least expected that to happen, in all three cases, and it's very painful. So how do you deal with that hurt? In all cases, I think Cheryl has just said it well. There is no other cure. You can choose to, and it doesn't change your situation. It poisons your life. You just have to forgive the person. And in instances, you have to confront the person to deal with a closure, to say, look, you've hurt me here. I didn't expect that of you. And there's always one or two things that might happen. Some people will totally be blind to what they have done. And so maybe as that book, Dr. Darrell talks about, the blind prayer in Judas, the person is not even aware he's made a mess of it, and it doesn't even care. So you then have to move on, and you now know that this person is this kind of a person. And but if you hold on to the hurt, then it destroys you. So you have to then be in a position to say, allow the grace of God to help you to forgive. Some of the hurts are with you for quite a while, and I'm reminded of Paul's story in the flesh here. Person that does a repeated activity to hurt you, whether intentionally or not even intentionally, where you have to consistently be forgiving the person and moving on until you get to a point where you know that God's grace is sufficient for you to manage that relationship. Thank you.
Thanks, Felice. Nelly?
May I read the next question?
Yeah. Yes, please.
So the next question was from Arthur, and it says, I hope I reworded it because it kind of didn't make sense the way it was written, but I reworded it. Arthur can correct me if I'm wrong. Do we expect something without even setting an expectation ourselves? I think is what the question is. So do we expect something, I suppose, from the other party without even setting an expectation ourselves?
Can I answer that a little bit? I mean, I could be very, again, as I say, I'm not an expert in this, but I will speak from personal experience. I think as humans, we do have unconscious expectations of people. And it's interesting. This also actually gets revealed in marriage a lot, where you have Liesl and Les Parrott. So they're a married couple. And they actually talk about unconscious expectations that you will often discover you have in a marriage, where For example, if in your home, the woman was the one who was always doing the cooking and the man was the one who was always doing the gardening, you don't necessarily verbalize that, and you don't really know you have those expectations until you get to a home where if you're a man and your wife cannot cook, it's like, how can you not cook? Women should cook. And it's not that the woman is wrong for cooking, and it's not necessarily that the man is wrong for expecting that, but it's those expectations that have been grounded in their mind, in their subconscious mind, because they have been experiencing that over and over and over and over again until it became an unconscious expectation. So I think sometimes we do have unconscious expectations that we don't necessarily realize we have. Could be because of past experiences. It could be the way that you have experienced friendships before. I was actually talking to a friend last night about this, that there are certain expectations I have of people, not because of past experiences, but because of repeated behavior. If someone texts me every day and then they stop texting me for 5 days, but then when they come back after the 5 days and say, hey, I've been busy, that's why I did not text you. And then, can I answer these questions, or can I respond to these texts now? And if they continuously do that for months on end, that becomes an unconscious expectation because you've been doing this, and I've seen it as a pattern. Now I expect it, not because you said you would do that, but because you've been doing it for such a consistent amount of time. Your consistency has given me some level of expectation of you. So now I expect you to perform at that particular level because that's what you've been doing all along. And when you do not perform at that level, unfortunately, my expectations are not met. But again, those were unconscious expectations that I made. I do think that our expectations are our responsibility. So when I get frustrated and I get disappointed, instead of always being like, you did not meet my expectations, I should take a pause and reflect and say, okay, cool. So I had expectations of this person. They did not perform at the level I expected them to. That's cool. But let's take a step back. Nelly, why did I expect this from this person? Is it because perhaps they had a certain pattern that I expected them to continue? Or is it because I had my own unconscious expectations? Or is it because I don't know, I have a certain ideology of what friendships should look like, what these type of relationships should look like? Or have I prematurely graduated a person? Because sometimes what we do is we think that because we are in, like, I think it was Brandon that made that analogy of us being in a connect group. I think because we're in a connect group, I automatically assume that you're my friend. But hey, we've only spent 3 months together. So technically, you shouldn't really be a friend. You should really be an associate. And I should be assessing our friendship and working to graduate you to friendship level and not graduate you prematurely to friendship level and then have certain level of expectations of you when you cannot necessarily perform because you are still assessing me and you are assessing if I am that friend that you need me to be. So again, it's just balancing those expectations. And whenever I'm frustrated and my expectations are not met, I should hold up a mirror and say, hey, Nelly, why do I have these expectations of these particular people? Perhaps I've placed them in the wrong place. Perhaps my expectations are misplaced, but I must now do an audit of my life and my friendships. I am responsible for my expectations, and I'm responsible for auditing my friendships and my relationships so that I am aligning them the right way and I'm defining them the right way, because ultimately they affect me and my emotions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Nali.
Okay, the last of the written questions that I have here is from Hao, and this one was, what qualifies your friendships? Is it the character of the person, or should it be based on your interactions with the person? I hope I'm reading it correctly, Hao. What qualifies your friendship? Is it your character, or is it the person's character or your interactions? Should it be based on your interactions with them?
Does anyone else want to answer? I know I'm not the only person who watched that sermon. Any takers?
So far in this service today. Nelly, I think you should call people. You should just
I think I should call people. I think so too.
Yeah.
There's some people who've been very quiet. They're just chilling. I connect group leaders, and I'm asking myself, like,
Yeah, Nadine is here. Maybe Nadine should give
I
us
think
a.
Nadine is here.
Nadine,
can you
come
answer
on.
that?
Yeah.
Nadine, and your camera's off. I don't know why, but okay.
Okay, what is the question?
Oh.
Guys, I have this on, but I'm busy with some other stuff. I'm doing some busy. Yeah, so that's why I'm like, but yeah, what's the question? Maybe I can take a shot.
So the question is, what qualifies your friendships? In other words, I think this is asking, based on the conversation we had earlier about friendships, to say some friendships we misjudge as being friendships when they aren't yet. So I think the question is, what qualifies it as a friendship? Should it be based on the person's character, or should it be based on your interactions with them?
Okay, cool. So this is actually a very interesting question for me. So a lot of my friends that I have, or good friends, are people I find that I've known for years, right? So, and it's interesting that this is actually the question, because in Feb, one of my cousins was out here from London, and I went to breakfast with him, and we had this very conversation. And so he and our lives are very similar in terms of we were in boarding school from a very young age. We went to very traditional schools, all of that sort of stuff. And so we, the friends that we made there are like friends we still have to this day. So some of my friends, like, I mean, those of you who pray with us in the evening at 7 on Zoom, met a friend of mine called Cleo. And Cleo and I, we've known each other since we were 4 years old, for example. And so for me, I find that I have very deep friendships with people who are good people, I find. And so I've been very blessed in terms of discerning, who I let into my circle. But I also know that as a human, I have these, tiers of friendships. I've got people that are very much inner circle that I'll share things with, and that sort of stuff. And then there are other people that are just like, cool, yeah, we can have a cool friendship, but it doesn't mean that, like I'm gonna stay connected with you. And then there are those that become like the associates and those kinds of people that like we know from afar, and that we don't have a lot of things in common or interest, and I can't personally, I don't feel safe enough to be able to share openly. And so for me, the basis in this case is not that they have to be a Christian when it comes to friendships, for example, because I think I've grown up in a very diverse society in terms of my family being of various religions and multitudes of cousins and that sort of stuff, where I learned that the basis often is good people. But then when I look at the people who are like within my inner circle, the older I've gotten, the more like, you have life experiences, and it needs to be people that, have a deep connection to God, and you understand that, but also people who have a worldly understanding of how the world works. And that I've come to learn is actually an element of wisdom and discernment which God gives to people. Because like Dr. Caroline Leaf, for example, says in her interview with Stephen Furtick, that she now realizes that science, for example, or secularism is now starting to catch up to what God had written in his Bible. And we all know that God speaks about things. God literally touches on everything in the Bible, from relationships to science, psychology, finances, how we need to farm. Like if you go, anything you think about, if you want to look for it, you'll probably find it in the Bible somewhere. And so for me, like those kinds of things are very, very important when it comes to friends. And also, I'm also the kinds of person that, I'm quite like a private individual. So they are very, like, I'm very picky about like who I let into my circle, because I'm a deep thinker, and yeah, all of those kinds of stuff. But yeah, like characteristics I look for is definitely humility, people who are worldly, people who have a connection to God, a deep, real connection to God. And then also people that just understand how the world works because of where I find myself in. And whether I can reciprocate that to other people, I don't know. They've got to be the judge, but I can speak for what works for me in terms of this. So yeah.
Cool. So we have a few hands up. So it will be, I see Tobega, and then Sherry, if your hand is still up, then N. N. I'm not sure who N is, and then Chanel. Is that fine?
Just say that order again, and then I
Okay,
can remind you.
Tobega, Sherry,
Yeah.
N, and then Chanel. Cool.
Okay,
I'll
cool.
also type it in.
I've got it.
All right, can you guys hear me? Cool. For me, what I've realized that it's a combination of both characteristics as well as interactions. I have people that are my friends that I probably would never have thought that they are my friends. I have people that I hang out with all the time simply because we serve together all the time, or we work together all the time, we interact together, but they don't necessarily mean they are my friends either. I think it becomes, sorry, I came in late for this talk and I haven't listened to the sermon, but it's what do I give into this relationship, as well as what do I receive from this relationship, and who this person is that I'm getting it from. So as you go, as Nadine said, like up in the tiers, those who are at most closest to me, we share the same values. If I think about my best friend, we see each other once a quarter because she's married, she got kids, and when I do go see her, I spend the whole weekend there. Her husband knows it. I sleep over. I try not to serve on that weekend because I know we only get to see each other really 4 times a year. However, her characteristics, her values have stood strong since we were in grade 4. Has the friendship changed over the years? Of course it has, but it's just evolved into something even more beautiful. So she's got such amazing characteristics and values. Our interactions are not as many as with most people, yet it works. And then some of your friendships are going to be a beautiful balance. Someone like, what God willing, I hope that my husband, someone that I will be with almost every single day in the future, and he will hold such characteristics and values that are aligned with mine and what I also believe in. But also don't judge almost like a book by its cover. There are some friendships or an acquaintance that, like I said, you never would have expected that the two of us would have been paired together. I remember Nelly, who works at the church, commented on my friendship with Pastor Musa, and she said, I never saw that coming. How did you guys become friends? And we're like, well, it was not a friendship to begin with because we clashed, and we did clash. But what stood firm was the values that she had, and also then being there for me in one of my toughest moments in my life, and being a solid companion, and that upgraded her to friendship status. So in order to like answer you, I don't think there's really one set way. But as Nadine says, you just need to understand and evaluate within yourself who is in your top 5, your top 2, your top 5, going all the way down to acquaintances. What is it for you? And sometimes it is a learning curve. Sometimes we don't know, like someone mentioned it about this subconscious requirements or standards that we have. Some things do come over time, but like I've mentioned it in the comments, a lot of it is dealt with via communication. And to be honest, it's just allowing God to just allow people to just come into your life in those moments and have a spirit of discernment as to where you place them. Yeah, that's all I have to say. It's a combination.
Cool. And then we have, sorry guys, if you are rushing for a second meeting, please feel free to hop off because I think people still want to discuss, right? So we've got Sherry, then we have N. I'm not sure who N is. So when you speak, please, after Sherry, please reveal yourself. And then we have Chanel. Cool.
Okay, yes. So I just wanted to, in answering Carl's question, I think that character is important because, again, there's a popular phrase that says, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. So when we have the ability to choose our friends, right? And I do think that looking for the character in them somewhat mirrors the characters of our own, what's important to us as a person. And yeah, and also like Nelly said, is our friends' characteristics becomes our what did you say, Nelly? Sorry, it becomes our not burden, but
Yeah,
becomes our problem,
character
right?
becomes their crisis and their character becomes
Yes,
our crisis.
exactly. So we also have to, decide what sorts of crisis we can handle, what sorts of crisis we want to handle, and what sorts of person we want to become. Because the same way we build into their lives, they build into ours. And also, I think Tobbs answered it very nicely about interaction. It doesn't mean because we interact with people like our family or people that we work with on a regular basis that we need to allow them in as friends. But also, like contrary to that, any friendship or any relationship takes intentionality, right? And I was close like to a few friends, very close. I still am. I think I am. But they once said to me that, Sherry, since you tight with your connect with friends, we don't see you, we don't speak to you, like there's no interaction. And that does cause, I think, any relationship to diminish to a certain extent. Yes, there are lots of friends where you can sort of pick up where you left off, but then, I think there still needs to, some sort of interaction still needs to be maintained, whether it's a message once in a while, whether it's a phone call, whatever it is. I do think that it does take intentional interaction to keep the friendship strong and to keep it going. Otherwise, it will probably diminish if it's left to unattended, if I could put it like that. Okay, that's all from me.
N?
Hi, Nidhi, it's Nadiri. Please, can Chanel go for me? I'm just looking for a verse in the Bible quick.
Okay, cool. Chanel, please go and then a lady will go after you.
Sure. All right. So to me, it's a combination of the two. So what are their values? What are their life principles? What guides their decision making? And to me, this should speak to their actions, meaning their character, and how does it manifest in their interactions? Someone can easily tell you what their values are. That doesn't necessarily mean that they live by them. And in choosing your friends as well, I think singleness is so important for that, because during our singleness, we address our insecurities and our brokenness, and we allow God to fill our emptiness. And it's how we come to realize our values as well. We're constantly readjusting, I believe, according to our seasons. And with that, our requirements readjust as well. So I think it's very much looking at, okay, the brokenness of my past to determine the choice of my friendships. Because you could say that my friend from the past hurt me in a certain way. So I'm going to look for someone who's completely opposite to their character. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that that friend is right for you. So it just takes wisdom, and it takes discernment. And as Sherry said as well, it takes intentions. And also with seasons, you adjust from seasons. So what you may have wanted in the past is not necessarily what is right for you now. So yeah, that's just from my side. Also with expectations, to what Lily said earlier, we always hold people to unrealistic expectations based on our deficiencies. And I think that's why singleness is so important, because that's when we allow all that emptiness to be filled. So that when we're in a relationship, when we're in a friendship, we're not holding that person to reach those expectations and allow that frustration to settle in as well. So yeah, that's all from my side.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well,
And
Natalie is looking for a scripture. So I have a best friend who we've been friends since like standard 6 or something. And who was saying, Nadine was saying that she has friends also, who are best friends her and Tobacco, who they see like once a quarter, whatever. And same thing with me and these friends. Like, I don't think it's necessarily about how much time you spend with them. I think it's about their character, because I think that's why you stay friends. And like, I know that even though I don't chat to them like every day or every week, if I had to pick up the phone and tell them I'm going through something and I need some of them to pray for me, or if I needed like help, just say financially or something, I know without a doubt that they would help me and pick up their hand. And it's just based on their character, that I know that I can share with them deep things, personal things, intimate things, and I know that they feel the same way about me. But I don't think it's necessarily about how much time you spend. Although when we do spend time together, it's like not a day has passed that we've seen each other. So that's just from my side. Like Nadine and Tobacco were saying, is that the dynamic of the friendship does change, because some of us are married and some of them have kids, where some are still single. But when we get together, it's like such a close-knit community that that's nice. That's from my side. I can see GC laughing. I wonder what he's laughing
at. He's laughing at the
standard
standard
6.
And it's revealing your age.
These guys, grade 8. Grade 8.
Now, Lady, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Please go ahead.
All right. I joined this chat late and I didn't watch the sermon that you're talking about. But with Charles' question, I think I agree completely with what Nadine, Tawega, and Chanel said. So if anything, I'm just piggybacking off of everything that they said. But I mean, I think it's a combination of the two. It's the interaction and the characteristics. I mean, you can't. I can't be friends with somebody just based off of our interaction, because like you've been talking about expectations and stuff like that. In the friendship, there's going to be things that I'm going to need from this person. And if I've based our friendship off of our interaction, you're never going to be able to fulfill or meet the needs that I have of you as a friend. And I will never be able to meet your needs, because now we are basing off our friendship off of our interactions. And there's going to be times in your friendship where you guys are going to, like you go through the roller coasters of friendship, and your friendship has got a lifespan of its own, and there's going to be different seasons that you guys enter, and none of us are going to be able to fulfill or meet any of that, because now we've just come together based off of the fact that we like the same movies, or we have been brought together because of the hobbies that we share, our likes or dislikes. So it has to be a combination of both. So the scripture that I was looking for was in John 15, basically from verse 1. But I mean, God is talking about, I am the true vine. So I always kind of bench my relationships now according to how God has said that we should, and how like Jesus modeled that, various people in the Bible. And just as God says that when we become attached to him, we immediately start bearing fruit, and you see signs of that. So you always need to ask yourself the question that, with these people, who do I become when I'm with my friends, and what kind of fruit am I bearing when I'm with these people? And is it fruit that you should be bearing? And also bringing your values into it as well. Somebody spoke, I can't remember which one of the girls spoke about values. And, I was just thinking, even beyond friendship, how you use certain determining factors, and you use them in every area and scope of your life, and in every other relationship that you're going to go into, your business relationships and etc. And, I think using values is a very valuable thing, because even when you go and you look for a job, for example, like a lot of people make the mistake of going to attach themselves, you know, to companies where the company's values are completely misaligned with that person's values. And it's a very tricky thing as a Christian, I think, because if there's that misalignment, you find yourself in a place where you're constantly frustrated, you know, by things that are happening. And it's because your values are misaligned. You didn't even know your own values that you had before you went into to that relationship, and then it just causes chaos. And you know, the other reason why you would need to check this person's character, I believe that, you know, one of the things, I mean, is you are constantly looking for fruit in this person. And I think one of the things that you're looking for in a person's character before you make them your friend is how committed this person is in things that are important to them, and do they have consistency in things that are important to them. You know, I was talking with a friend last night and we were talking about this, and I was like, at the end of the day, when you go into a relationship with your friend, it's the same, it's almost like kind of the same thing that you're doing when you're getting into marriage. But I mean, you are taking a leap of faith, especially if you're going to consider this person an inner circle friend. You are taking a leap of faith, and you're telling this person that, listen, I'm literally about to be, you know, undress myself in front of you in certain situations. So I'm trusting you, and I'm trusting in this friendship. And, you know, so I feel like you have to have, there's certain things that you have to have in your mind going into a friendship where it's like you're looking out for certain things. Is this person consistent? Are they committed? Because if I pick up the phone and I need something from them, or I'm going through something, are they a reliable person? So, I mean, there's definitely things that you need to look out for before you make somebody a friend. And in that, also figuring out where in the tier of relationship they are. Are they an inner circle friend? Are they an acquaintance? You know, et cetera, et cetera.
That's so good, Naledi. Thank you. I see there's also there's Comfort who has their hand up, and there's someone else. So I think Flo as well. So Comfort, can you go first?
Hi. For me, friendship is not about perfection. It's all about how you interact with people, how you understand them, and how they understand you. And I also, because character-wise, friendship shouldn't be based on character, because there's something I always say, that character and behavior are not the same. And sometimes people are okay, but their character shows otherwise. And sometimes people are very funny, but their character looks so profound. So if you're looking into the character, you might be deceived. So friendship is more about interaction, and we leave the character out of it, the behavior, because sometimes they are forced to behave in a funny way based on the situation you're facing. You know, you might meet someone at the time they are going through difficulties, and then because you don't understand them and they don't understand you, you judge them wrongly. But if you give it just a little time to interact with them, get to know them better, then you realize he or she is a very wonderful person. So friendship should be based more on interaction. And for me, no one is perfect. When someone doesn't give you their time, you show them, you know, that you're there. You give them your time, so that when you are also in need, they will be there for you. Thank you.
Cool. So maybe we've missed a step there. Maybe we should actually define what character is, because I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. And I'm going to make this same example I made in the beginning, that Judas and Peter made the same mistake, or they committed the same mistake, or same, I don't know if you call it transgression against Jesus. The only difference was Peter had a bad day, Judas had bad character. With Judas, it was not a one-time thing. With Peter, it was. So, which is why Jesus did not necessarily disown Peter, because he understood that Peter had a bad day. But Judas it was a repeated offense when it was with Judas. It didn't start with Judas betraying Jesus by selling him to the Pharisees. That's not where it started. It started before, when he was stealing money from Jesus and the disciples. It started when he kept complaining about why we were wasting such expensive perfume bottle when we can actually sell it and give it off to charity, even though that was not what he was really going to do. So maybe we've missed a step by actually defining what character is and what character means to us. And I don't know, is there anyone who would like to tackle that? Because I believe character is a very important part of friendship, because character defines where we're going to go. That's all about our vision. Are we, if your character, for me personally, if I do not agree with your character, who you are as a person, I will probably limit my interactions with you, because it means that your character is going to become my crisis ultimately. So I don't know, maybe we need to not redefine, but define what character means to us. I see Naledi 2.0 has her hand up. Maybe she can speak. And I don't know if there's anyone else who'd like to speak. I'm just gonna check if anyone else has their hand up.
Thank you, Nelly, for that. So I think in order to determine or kind of discern on someone's character, you first need to have interactions with them. So there's the first part where I interact with you, and it's through the interaction that I can pick up your character, which may be your fruit, right? It's if we're going out together, how do you treat the waiters and the waitresses? It is while we were interacting that I was able to see, oh, this is the type of person that you are. So there will always be a level of interaction. There always needs to be some interaction in order for us to figure out or discern people's fruits. And like Dr. Darius said, just because your fruit is whatever it is, just because your fruit is an orange, and for me personally, and you know this, just because nuts are not good for me, it doesn't mean they're absolutely not good. They just make me sick. I'm allergic to peanuts. I'm allergic to all nuts. I just need to be able to recognize nuts, be able to say, oh, I see that this is a nut. So I then need to stay away from nuts, but nuts are not bad. So even during our interactions, I may pick up stuff about you, your fruit, that is bad for me, but it doesn't make you a bad person. And all of this happens while we're interacting. And at this point, I can then decide, okay, since you are nuts and essentially are bad for me, I'm going to lessen my interactions with you, therefore moving you into either an associate or an assignment or any of the other definitions that Dr. Darius was talking about.
Thank you, Naledi. That's actually very good. I love that analogy of nuts are not bad, but I must recognize if they're bad for me, then make the necessary adjustments. Nuts are not bad. And I mean, speaking from experience, she really is allergic to nuts, by the way, guys. So every time I cook for her, I always have to be mindful of, okay, did we put nuts or not? Make sure if there are nuts in the house, let's make sure her EpiPen is around. But it is a real issue where sometimes a person is not necessarily, they're not a bad people. That's not what we're saying, but it may be that they're just not suitable for you. And it could be they're not suitable for you at that particular season because God may be fixing things in your heart in that particular season. And you are not ready for them, or they are not ready for you. But then when the next season comes, you can then reevaluate. Maybe they're good for me now, and then you go back and you start reassessing and you start realigning that relationship. That doesn't mean that people are bad. It's just they might not be good for you in that particular season. And I see Brandon and Naledi have their hand up. So Brandon first, and then Nadia. Sorry.
No, I think Nadia had a hand up first. Let her go first.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Thank you, Brandon. So for me, I saw Comfort's comment in terms of behavior and character, and definitely they're two different things. I think character for me, it's intrinsic qualities of who you are. So we kind of have an example like with Judas. He was just shady from the beginning. That was his character. And then when you compare with Peter, his behavior was like his temper. And I always think like behavior are things that you can work on, but someone's character, it's intrinsically who they are. And I don't hear a lot of time people are like, oh, he's changed his character, because that's Those are the qualities and values that you have centered yourself in. Yet behaviors are things that you can change. There are many times when you're in friendships and you have a friend, let's say, who's impatient, or a friend who always like gets angry. Those are behaviors where you can kind of speak to a friend and be like, oh, you know what, you tend to get angry or jealous or that kind of thing in a certain environment. But I feel like characteristics are very much a part of who you are in terms of intrinsically. And that's why it speaks of Christ-like character, because that doesn't shift. Jesus Christ's character is steadfast. That's who he was. That's who he's always been, you know? So I always say, like, in terms of, we need to differentiate. And that's why sometimes you can be like, okay, this person's got a good character, I see it, but their behaviors tend to be off at times. And you work on that relationship and manage and be like, okay, this behavior is not cool. So I think for me, those are the kind of, like, in terms of differentiations when it comes to a person's characteristics and behavior.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nadia. Actually, that's sort of what I was going to say along those lines and speaking about character. But to be honest with you, I was just reminded of the verse when we mentioned character, Romans 5:4. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. Just thinking about my life, I think my life was pretty good up until I got hurt. And only through the pain, or going through the pain, did I understand that that was actually my character building, or my cross to bear, or building up my character, and the importance and relevance of actually having character. But we must also guard against being judgmental. So I came to the conclusion that if I wore Christ as best I could, that meant that I would not take offense as easily, I would not be judgmental, and I would open up myself in a different way when I'm engaging with people, prior to, let's say, when I was hurt, when I would be able to cut off people, or would think that I am better off without somebody, or whatever else thought process or patterns I would have undergone. But the more you study the scriptures and the more you understand the importance, or we understand the importance of how to wear Christ well, then in how you deal with hurt and pain, or with people as friends and associates or acquaintances, is exactly, I think, where you'll find whether somebody will actually end up being your friend, or you will end up being somebody's friend. I think it's always important to always remember to be humble, and to remain humble, and to be meek, and those kinds of traits. And if you adopt those kinds of traits, I think eventually you'll end up where you need to be, whether that's finding a partner or whether that's finding a friend. Just wear Christ well. Too often we're reading too much of our Huffington Posts and whatever else, and we tend to adopt that as part of our makeup, and we convolute the boundaries between what Christ, or how Christ teaches us to be, or the Bible teaches us to be, or how we need to be or should be, and what the world is. And so we must just guard against, what choices we're making in how we want to acquit ourselves. And that's sort of the lessons I've learned through my pain that I've undergone. That's all I want to say. Character building.
I love that. That is so good, Brandon. Thank you. I love that scripture that said that trials basically get to a point where they develop our character, because we are evolving. We are constantly evolving into becoming like Christ. And essentially that's what we should be striving for, is becoming like Christ, even in the way that we do relationships, and the way that we do our friendships. Is we must do friendships like Christ did them. I don't know if there's any other hands, or we can conclude and close. Okay, so Sheldon, okay, can I read what Sheldon says? Okay, first let me go to, okay, Naledi, you can't know what someone's heart is like, and we make the mistake of basing a relationship off someone's heart. The only thing you can look for is character traits. They will reveal what's in someone's heart. And then Sheldon says, just check the definition of character in my Bible concordance. Yes, GC, I said it. Character. Moral excellence and firmness, main or essential nature. So to me, moral talks about what your beliefs are and what your belief system is, what your values are, and what are the things that are close to your heart. And essential nature is the essence of who you are. So that's That's the definition of character according to the Bible book. Oh, concordance. Sheldon. I don't know, Sheldon, do you want to add to that?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
So moral excellence, like, so if you, I was trying to look up the definition of morals as well, just to see what it was, but they didn't have anything here. But I mean, if you just think in the worldly definition of morals, it's the things that are near and dear to your heart, so the things that form your belief system. So it's something like respecting your parents, respecting those that are older than you, and being respectful to others. That is a value to you, and that forms part of your belief system, and then that's essentially your character and who you are as a person. So I think it's stuff like that that defines your character. And I think all of this is tying back to the first question of whether it's about time or whether it's about character. That helps develop those friendships. And I think the character one is one that goes and is the one that actually carries more weight than so maybe both of them must probably carry weight, spending time with the person and character, but I think that the character one is maybe more weighted to that side for me, whereas for someone else it might be different depending on also, you know, like what their love language is, maybe spend time and having that one-on-one interaction, whereas others they may prefer like a digital connection, but you still get the essence of the person coming through, whether it's in person or over video chat.
Cool. There's an interesting question that Hau just put on. Is there such thing, can the people who have been married or married answer this one? Or yes, please, like especially the ones with more experience than some of us. Please answer this question. Is there such thing as the one? Or do we have to just make the best of the relationship we're in?
How can we take this one offline, please? No, how's thinking?
How much time do you have?
No, how we dealt with this one? How can we talk after school, please?
I mean, some of us would like to hear the answer.
Yes, thank you.
So, some of you guys think you are the one. That's the problem.
So does the one mean soulmate? Just to add to that thought process.
Sheldon?
Yes, it means soulmate.
Guys, I don't know if there is such a thing as the one, but I've experiences like when I was dating Luvi and stuff, because I liked the person who she was, and obviously like there was the attraction between us, but I really did pray and seek God for guidance and asked for God to guide me and for her to be the one that I essentially married. So from the get-go, from the beginning, I already knew that if we start this relationship, it's going to lead to something like that. I prayed hard. I guidance, and so I think it's also realizing, like from the earlier slides that Nili had, it's like you need to be secure of who person as well, because it takes two eggs to make an omelet. And I mean, if one person is going to be lacking in a certain area of their character or their spiritual walk, initially the relationship might be fine, but then you might encounter problems down the line when the novelty, if I can say that, wears off. Then like whatever the basis and the true foundation is of the relationship, that's what's going to come through in the next upcoming months. So I think it's realizing that you are two individuals, but to accept that these flaws of one another. I mean, I'm definitely not perfect. I get on her nerves, especially after lockdown. Oh my goodness. But I mean, you work through it. There's a compromise that comes with it. It's not settling, but it's also seeking God for his guidance and direction.
Yeah, if I may just also add a little bit to thanks so much, Sheldon, to what Sheldon just said. I think I can be wrong. I could be wrong. I think there's something like as the one. I'm going to use an example of the model Abraham used to choose a partner for Isaac. So Abraham said, he said, please don't marry don't look for a wife in this part of the world or in this part of the country. Go to this particular place and marry this kind of lady for my son. And that is actually what happened. I don't know, maybe you guys know, some Jewish community don't like marrying outside their community. So I think there is something, the one. We can try to make a relationship work, but I still believe there are people God has specifically designed for you. If you are really going to, to have successful marriage, I think some are good as friends and some are good for marriage. And sometimes the problem is try to, make friends into marriage, and sometimes it doesn't work. So I think there is something like the one. Yeah. Jesus is laughing, but I think there is.
I have a slight counter, or I don't know, addition to that. So I think the problem is we have let the world define what we think the one is. And according to the world, there is one person that was created for you. That is not true. Because that means with 8 billion people in the world, if God had only given me one specific person to be my husband, and that person is in South, okay, Maria, sorry, you found your fiance in South America, that's great. But like if he was in, okay, let me not say South America, if he was in Greenland, for example, in what universe would I just fly off to Greenland and meet this person? It basically means that that person who God created for me in Greenland would marry another person in Greenland, and then that other person who was supposed to marry someone else has now married another person. Now there's a whole confusion. We are not really marrying the people that God wanted us to marry, and there's a whole confusion. And the word clearly states that God is not a God of confusion. He's not the author of confusion. He's a God of peace, and he's a God of order. So I personally don't believe that God created one specific man for me. I believe what he does is he says, here's perhaps a pool, but that pool is people who spiritually are like this, emotionally are like this, because not only are they going to be compatible for you, but they should be suitable. And I will possibly go through a season where God presents me to that particular person at a time, or he presents them. I then choose. God does not choose for you. That is such a lie. God has never chosen any spouse for anyone. If you check here the Bible, even Adam, God did not say, hey, Adam, this is your wife. He presented the woman. Then Adam said, this is bone of my bones,
Nelly?
flesh of my flesh. So God presented, Adam chose.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Sorry. So I'm saying God presents, we choose. God does not force a person on you, because when that person becomes a problem, then it means God made the wrong choice. So he does not do that. He presents, you choose. Then what you do is you then manage that choice that you made.
Yeah,
that's my personal belief.
So this is my closing thoughts on Carl's question. So I think our definition of the one is a little bit obscured. So when I said the one, I'm not talking about one person, like one. It's not even arithmetically possible, like one person. No, I'm not sure that is what we're talking about. But I'm talking about a set of people where you can choose from, a kind of a community, not one person, but an appropriate one community that is edible enough, to choose a marriage partner from. That's my definition of the one, but not like Nadia is the one, and without Nadia, like nothing else. No, that's not possible. That's not possible. Yeah, but I think we can move on. That's just my thoughts.
Sorry, Shay's question. Can I will answer it on the text. I will not answer it. Can someone else take that question? A different perspective. Thank you.
Shay, what's the question?
I said Brandon and Nadia again.
So in terms of, I think when it comes to dating, there has to be fundamentals that are there, like as a Christian. So they used to call it dating to convert to possess, where you're almost going to date them and hopefully they become Christian, And even the word says you should not be with people who are equally yoked. There are people who've done that, and yes, it works out in the end, but that is not recommendation. I feel like in terms of Christians, there should be some form of foundation. Are they Christian? Like for me, that's the biggest conversation that you should have. Like, are they Christian? And then the rest of the things you can build on Is it absolutely wrong? No, because some people do it. But I feel in terms of for you to have that commonality, I think as Christians, the other person should be born again. Because now it becomes almost as you're dragging this partner along in terms of, and you now have these unexpected expectations, because now you're seeing other people who are in Christian equally yoked relationships. Now you're with this person that you're dragging along, and it just adds complications and dynamics to the relationship that you wouldn't have if you had chosen someone who's equally yoked. And so for me, that's why, like, I would never attempt to date a person who's not born again. And not saying that they should be Pastor Andre reloaded, because we are all at different relationships in terms of, you know, but as long as that base is there, that they're Christian, we're all on different levels, and I would never judge someone in terms of we're all walking this out. But definitely being unequally yoked is also, and also just to add on Nelly, I also don't think there is one specific person, because God is a God of free will. He's always given us free will in his word. And it's your choice, basically, who you choose you're going to be with at the end of the day. He might have a desired person for you, but you're always presented with choice. And that's why sometimes you see even people in the body of Christ, people who are in ministry, who got married to one person, preachers, and then got divorced. Sorry, there's lightning. Who got divorced, and now they're married with someone, and they're on their second marriage. So are we saying that they were meant to be with one person? No, but their second marriage is equally successful. So it also shows you that in that sense, you can be with a person in a certain season and it doesn't work out. And then God also gives you the opportunity to move out. And that's why this whole thing of saying, God said you're the one, that is a lie from the pits of hell. Ain't nobody said that.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm asking is because I once tried this. Since I was a little girl, I was like, I want a godly man who's going to lead me in life, who's going to lead me in prayer, who I can submit to, who's going to lead my future family. And then I did date this guy who said he believed in God. He said all the right things. But the deeper I got into the relationship, the more I realized that that is not the case at all. And the more I tried to pull him up to God, the more he dragged me down. So now I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I want a man who's in church. I want a man whose prayer life is on fire. I want a godly man like the Bible says, and I'm not backing down from that. If you're not a godly man, we can be friends, and that is it. But now, with that being said, most of my friends are like, but you're putting the standards so high. You're never going to find a man. You're going to end up being single forever. So now I'm like, okay, but is this a man that exists, or are my expectations too high? So that's kind of the background of the question, because I'm also at an age where I'm like, cool, I don't want to be dating anymore. I don't want to be playing games. Like, I don't want to be married tomorrow, but I want to find the person that I'm going to build my life with. And my heart's desire is to find a godly man. But now also I have that voice that's like, are your expectations too high?
Nearly, JC's hand is like in a rave.
Yes, GC's hand is up. Can he go? But like Shay, also I wanted to say, you're very young. Please don't think, and don't even try to lower your standards. That's a lie that the enemy wants you to believe. Don't you dare. You are, like even God says, you are a chosen generation. You are peculiar. You are peculiar. It means you are different for a reason. If you make 2% of the population, that's because God wants you that way. If any man cannot meet your standards, he's not for you. Keep it moving. He must keep it moving. Like I am not against any woman lowering their standards. I'm sorry. No woman should ever lower their standards, especially if it's a spiritual standard.
Yeah.
And no man too.
No man should.
Thanks, Nelly. Thanks, Nelly.
Okay, guys, let's just deal with the first question, which I didn't think we still need to deal with. Is there the one? Guys, this is a problematic question. It's problematic because do I believe the will of God is a line, therefore I might just miss it? Or do I believe the will of God is broad? Because if I believe the will of God is a line, if I'm not where I thought God wants me to be, well, then my whole future's just messed up. just like that. So it's actually a question about your relationship with God. So you need to decide now if you believe that God is about lines, about places, about workplaces, about certain people. I think that God's will is broad. As long as you honor him, you are truthful to yourself, and you give yourself, whether it's your job, whether it's a life partner, it's the same thing. Another thing I'll caution you guys on is, let's be cautious of not getting emotionally involved first and then try and make things work from there. Let me use myself and why I'm saying that. I find that once I like somebody, I become irrational. I then start asking questions like, is it wrong to date someone who doesn't know God, of a different faith, they live in another country, they're with someone right now, but they like me. Problem is, you are making a decision in a place of not decision making. It's often said that when you're, and Dr. Jairus Daniels also speaks about that, when your emotions are high, you are in no place to be making a decision. And I guess that's where also then the argument about singleness comes in. Before you are even liking or being liked is when decisions should be made. And that's why you need a close circle. You need someone else to then say, hold me accountable to this. I am committing that this is the standard. Shay, to come back to you about are your standards too high? Here's my answer, which is from Dr. Jairus Daniels. It's from one of his messages. I'll try and recite it. I thought I would find it. I hadn't found it yet. But better to be single than to be married and miserable. Let me qualify that once again. This is not theoretical for me. I've been single, I've been married. I know both positions. Shay, I think you are in your early 20s. You are blessed, my sister, trust me. If I was listening to this when I was at your age, I would be set up for life. But can I tell you this, and openly for me, I've been in a place where I was married and I was miserable, and I wished that my wife would divorce me. Hello? I thought you were a man of God, you see. That's how miserable I was. That's how desperate I was. I'd rather, listen to me, I've just turned 40. I'd rather be 40 and single than be 28 and be miserably married. Hear it from me. It's often said that experience is, Dr. Jairus Daniels also says this, is probably the most effective way of learning. The trouble with it is that it's expensive. It takes too much time to learn from your experience. That's why we then say, your life is too short to learn from your mistakes alone. Learn from others. So the reason why your standards are high is that you don't want to find yourself saying anything will do. Yeah. That's the lie of the enemy, that it's too late and your friends. I have a friend of mine who posted something on social media. I reposted it. He was trying to appreciate his mom, and the mom said, hey, you must marry now. Your family will mean good. They don't mean bad. They mean good. They love you, but it's not worth it. It's a one-way ticket, guys. Let's just say, if you're Christian and you believe in marriage as being a covenant, not a legal contract, this is where you need to read or listen to Dr. Miles Monroe. The legal contract that you have as being a married person status, where you can go buy a house. And when you fill in your home affairs forms, you say marital status married. That's a contract that you can come out of. If, however, you believe in marriage being a covenant, it's a one-way ticket. Another preacher describes it this way, Dr. Creflo Dollar. He says, people misunderstand what it means when your vows you say, till death do us part. It doesn't mean this. It doesn't mean when one of you dies, then your marriage has been dissolved. In fact, here's what it means, is that when your wife says to you or your husband, I can't do this anymore. I didn't sign up for this. You say, honey, I'll be right back. You go to the bedroom, pull out a gun, You cook it, and then you say, let me help you out of this. Yes. The only way out of marriage in the definition of a covenant, hello, covenant, blood covenant, something has to die. Come on, guys. This is why in the olden days, the Jewish people, and even in our African culture, we still slaughter a goat, in case you didn't know, or a chicken, or a cow. Because blood must be shed. Now, if you understand marriage to be that, if you're dating to have fun, go ahead, have fun. We might talk to you about that, about other things to consider. But if you're talking about marriage, marriage is a permanent, one-time only decision that is a one-way ticket. It's like a life sentence. It's like lockdown for life with someone. So for that reason, it has to be taken, it's a decision that's going to be taken with utmost seriousness. It can't just be a cozy domestic, yeah, but he says he likes me. Yeah, but we've been, Are you prepared to die if you don't want to be with me anymore? Then you don't deserve me. Isn't that what Jesus says? If you're not willing to, here's what it says in the book of Matthew. If you prefer your mother or your father over me, if you prefer your sister over me, you don't deserve me. Now, what's Jesus saying there? Are you saying that we can't have family and mother and father? We can't respect it? No. He's just saying, you are committed to me first. So if you're going to define marriage, you no longer have the option of defining it. But my friends, and I read, and that book, and that series, and that, Your definition of marriage is now the Bible. Okay, so two quick things. Let's recap. Two quick things. Is a will of God a line? Then I might miss it. There's a one. Or is it broad? Okay, and then two, am I serious about marriage, or am I looking to just vibe with someone? Rather vibe with someone, because marriage is a whole different animal. It's like going to Sun City.
Nadia?
And I just wanted to add something. I don't remember which sermon I was watching, but one of the pastors actually started by apologizing to the church. And he was actually saying that he feels that as the church, they've put so much pressure on congregation in terms of marriage. And this is not directed to anyone. This is just a general comment where he said, as Christians, we've come to a place where we kind of idolize marriage like it's this final destination. As soon as you're born again and you're in the church, that marriage is this place where everybody must, like the promised land that everybody needs to get to. And we kind of start idolizing marriage in a sense. And I think as Christians, we need to come to a place where we're comfortable in our singlehood, like Nelly said, talking about Dr. Miles Monroe, in the sense that we come to a point where, yes, marriage is my desire, but I'm willing to take it and to leave it at the feet of the Father and say, God, when it's time, you will bring me a helpmate and it will happen. But even if it doesn't happen, I should also still be content. And that's at the point where it's like, yes, it's your desire. And he does say that I'll give you the desires of our heart. But I feel like in Christian relationships or Christian community, we need to come to a point where we don't idolize being married, and we're also not looking around. Yes, it's awesome if 90% of my Connect group is married, but I need to trust my process and the journey that God is taking me on. If I'm going to get married at 45 or 50, that is the road that God has given me, and I need to be content. Because if you're not content with yourself, like I said before, if you're miserable in your singleness, you are going to be miserable married. Marriage does not change who you are, or it doesn't bring like this fulfillment. You need to be at this state complete and whole and fulfilled. Because one of the things is with marriage, you enter marriage and you die to yourself daily. There are going to be so many things about you that are going to be revealed and brought to the surface that you're going to have to deal, because these are two different people, two different backgrounds, who were raised by parents, and so many different things that are now coming together. and becoming one, which is on its own another beast that you're going to have to deal with. So just to encourage us that in this season, you know, in your single, trust the process, trust that what God is working. Maybe there are things in you that God is still pruning out. You know, there are things that you still need to deal with, trust issues, hurts, and whatever. And that's why you're still single. Not necessarily that you're not going to get married or your partner is not there. And God is probably dealing with your partner in his corner where he is. Maybe he's a selfish individual and God is teaching him how not to be selfish, because now he's going to partner up with you, and he needs to be able to be a point where he can partner up with you. So there's so many things, and that's why they always say, like, almost God, it's almost like at a theater. When you see the final show, which is marriage, that's the final show. But behind the scenes, behind the curtains, there's so many things that are happening. People are changing, people are getting into character, and that's how God works. There's so many things that you're not seeing concerning your partner and your marriage that God is busy working behind the scenes. So just for us to come to a point where we're content in this season, but not saying that I'm not believing for marriage. You still have that, but it mustn't be an idol. Take it to the feet of the Father and say, God, this is my desire. This is the kind of man that I want, and leave it there and trust that God will work out everything, and walk away from it and continue on your journey.
So good, Nadia. Okay, so I see How's hand is up, and I saw Brandon was trying to share something. So Brandon, can you share something? And then okay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Sure. I had like an hour discussion planned in my mind. It was so fantastic to listen to you guys. I have been married before, and I also went out with a non-believer and a believer. And actually, while the discussion was carrying on, I was going through my...
Sorry, you were married twice. Is it correct?
No, I was going out with a Christian, and I was married to a non-believer.
But not at the same time?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not a player. No, what I was trying to show, but I noticed on the screen it goes the other way, back to front, but it says a woman's heart should be so close to God that a man should have to chase him to find her. I think that's very important. I mean, Nadia said a lot of what I wanted to say, so I don't want to go into that discussion too much. She's absolutely spot on. But having been married before and looking at marriage, for me, I don't know about the whole blood thing, but for me, divorce, or the issue of divorce or getting a certificate, is highly controversial. And when one sets out to get married, you never set out to get married with the idea that divorce is an option. Okay, that's first and foremost. So choosing a partner to spend your life with and commit to is exactly good times and bad times, because I found that when the bad times came, and that's where you really found out who your partner really was. So, you know, it's important that you actually, in your walk with God and where you are in terms of your journey, and understanding where you want to go and how far you think you can get there, because you'll never get there. None of us will ever get there, because we all fall short, and His grace is the gap. His grace lives in the gap. Pastor T.D. Jakes said that. Okay, and so whilst it's always good to say that we have this perfect image of what the perfect man or woman should be. And my mom told me this one day when I came home from school. She said to me, "Brendan, are you gay?" I said, "Why do you say that?" She said, "Because you don't bring any girls home." And I said, "But mommy, I'm looking for the perfect woman. I haven't found the perfect girl, so why would I want to bring her home to meet you?" She says, "No, I'm just worried. I don't see you with any girls." And I was like, "No, I'm waiting for the perfect girl." And she said, "You will never find the perfect girl." And when she told me that, I sort of lowered my standard, because for me, that standard had to be what my idea of what a Christian woman should be. And I never met a girl like that, no matter how much I went to church or saw girls out there. It was a non-starter that if they weren't Christian, that they were already discounted in my book. And I lowered my standard and I dropped my gaze, and I married a person, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. And as I said, you get married with the view that you never want to get divorced, but in the end, it came to that. I got divorced, and then I met a Christian woman, and went to church, and was the epitome of a committed Christian. And I thought, well, there it is. And it still didn't work out, because the level of maturity in her walk or Christian walk wasn't to my expectation. And again, and that's why I'm also I'm big on the point of being judgmental, because you got to be careful, you know, that you don't set yourself up to be this la-di-da Christian that knows it all and has the book knowledge but doesn't apply it. So for me, it's all about the application. And like Chanel said, the action needs to follow the words. And so as much as we meet as a group and we talk it, we must be able to walk it. And for me, that's how I have always lived my life. And for me, that's the partner that I'm looking for. And I'm saying that when you're choosing a partner, never lower your standard. The first response I had when I saw the question that Shay had put up was, take it to the Lord in prayer. And Nadia just rounded off her point with the same thing. Take it to the Lord in prayer, because I know the criteria that I'm looking for. I don't know if I'll ever get there. But I know that if I surround myself with the people of God, if I surround myself with the things of God, if I do the things of God and not subject myself to worldly things, then chances are I'm going to find the woman within that circle. So I need to be careful of not subjecting or opening up my spirit and myself to things that are not of God. And I need the handbook, which is the Bible, to direct me on how I need to live my life, how I need to be, and that will come to me by virtue of what God will direct. That's how He direct my path. I believe that that's what will happen. I'll find someone now based on what I know now that I didn't know before. I think that's why it's important to understand your journey and trust the journey, as Nadia said. That's all.
Cool. Thank you, Brandon. So guys, we only have 10 minutes left. So I'm going to ask how to speak, and then Chanel. And then I'm not sure if, first of all, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Yves or Ves? I don't know, guys. I'm not a brand person. I don't know if you want, I saw you comment. Yeah?
It's
okay,
Eve.
cool.
Eve.
Eve. Oh, okay, cool. So
like Adam and Eve.
Okay, and then Eve, if you want to say something, and then we'll close off in prayer. I'll just ask Daniel to close off in prayer for us, and if he's got any other stuff to say. Yeah, cool.
All right, guys. I've enjoyed what everyone has had to share, and it's been some really, really insightful. And thanks for your vulnerability, guys. And we see it, and we honor it, and it does make an impact into our lives as well. Now, coming back to the topic about the one. Yes, maybe I see your guys' point of view, but what I feel though is that we can always ask God to confirm things for us. And I feel that if something is not the right thing, the Holy Spirit sometimes lets you know, and there's an uneasiness that you might feel if you're in a relationship that's not right for you. But because I believe that the Holy Spirit can confirm something is not right for you, then that means I must also believe that He can also confirm if something is right for you. And then now, but before I head into that, guys, I wanted to share something quickly, just based on something that I went through, where I dated a Christian girl, and yeah, she was a great person, everything, but we wanted different things. And sometimes I think the pressure of being a Christian and trying to get married first, or all these things, can line up, and then you can find yourself in something that looks good, but it's not God. And there's a song that the guy who wrote the song, the inspiration behind the song, basically explains the season that I was in. And I just want to share that. He says that I wanted to shed a light on a season in my life where I was jumping ahead of God. Instead of waiting for what God wanted, I was searching for what I thought I wanted. Every good thing is not a God thing, and I realized that with this specific girl I was talking to. So I decided to pull back and let God be God. This song represents the revelation the Lord gave me on the importance of submitting my desires to Him and letting Him hold my heart until He brings me the person I can give it to. Just to close, not saying that you guys should be in relationships where someone just says to you, I believe you're the one, type of thing. Because obviously there's a danger in that. And obviously we need to always qualify things with God's wisdom, where there's fruit in the relationship and what it brings out of you. But what I want to just share or stretch the importance of is submitting our desires to God. and allowing him to lead them. And then that will allow our things to prosper. As yeah, that's all I wanted to share. That's that.
That's very
But yeah,
profound.
but thanks guys. Thanks
Yeah,
for
that's very
everything.
profound, Tal. Very, very profound. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'll share quickly. So it's just back to this whole challenge of people questioning us about our standards. But marriage is one of the most important things in life. And I remember GC sent me this message by Darius Daniels early in my single life. And I was like, I don't want to watch this. I'm not even looking for anybody. But it was so important, you know, in determining your relationships. And one of the things he says is, getting a partner is more than just company. They contribute to the quality and course of your life. When you say I do, you say I do to buying property together, doing finances together, raising kids together, being roommates, choosing to accept each other's strengths and weaknesses. And that means that both of your decisions affect your union. It affects your life. It affects how your kids are brought up. And also, your union is more than just for yourselves. It also affects others. It can cause massive blessings in other people's lives. Because if we look at Ruth and Boaz, Obed was born. And then Jesse, who is the father of David. And he mentions that in his message as well. So there's so much that can come out of a marriage. So we have such an important decision to make when we're choosing that partner. And that comes from standards. And like I said earlier in the chat, our standards are not of the world standards. They're of God's standards. So that's okay. And we need to be okay with that and just blocking out those voices of people who don't understand. Yeah, just from my side.
I think I'll write a book on that channel. That's so good. Powerful. Thanks for sharing.
I don't know if Eve wanted to say something.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. The thing is what I want to say about it, it's you know what you say recently, like God will choose for you a partner. That is actually totally wrong in the sense like God will never choose a partner. I agree with you, but on the other side, I can just mention that you just have to pray because God will actually present you different partners or different people. So it's up to you now to pray and then to ask God to reveal you the character of each person that will fit according to your maybe character that will match according to your perception. So that is one thing. On the other side is, I think regarding choosing the one, because we always have that good image of the right partner, but I think the right partner is just around there. It's just for you to discover who's the person actually God actually chosen for you, and then you have to pray and ask God for God to reveal who's that person, the character of that person. So on the other side also, I think for me, according to my experience, I dated this person. We were actually friends for 5 years. So it was one of the best relationships because I was actually free to be myself. She was my best friend, you know. So it was one of the best relationships that I ever had because I was free to be myself. I didn't pretend to impress her with anything else. But I even remember on my first date that I didn't have money and then she took me out on that date. So which shows that I was actually free to be myself in front of her. I didn't want to impress her. So that was the best relationship that I ever had. I even regret today because we came to a close point that we were about to get married, but you know, with the cultures and the family got involved. And then me personally, I decided to break up because she was in a situation that she was not, let's say, she couldn't choose whether it's a family or whether it's me. And that was in Cape Town before I relocated in Johannesburg. So that is a sad story. But for me, I believe in friendship. I prefer to date someone that we are friends. We know each other way much better before we move to the next stage than meeting someone on Tinder or maybe in Facebook or whatever, because those kind of things doesn't actually last longer. So that was my sharing.
You don't believe in having a spark. You don't believe the spark should be there.
it can be there, but this is according to my own experience, and
Okay, so spark first, then friends, and then follow through after that.
yeah, because spark can come up like once in a while. You see, like when you light up like a matches, and then it goes off. But
Sure. No, I'm just being tongue in cheek. I hear you.
yeah. So guys, that's
Yeah.
also the Thursday.
Yeah, guys,
So
I think we can pray now. But just to like conclude is, we need to be very intentional about how we do our relationships. We cannot do relationships by default. And seasons change, and as they change, we should reevaluate our relationships, because it's possible to move people from associate level to friendship level. And the reason it's also so important that we become good friends is, if I cannot do my friendships right, then it's highly likely that my marriage will not be as good, or I'll be doing a disservice to my marriage, because marriage and romantic relationships should be based on the foundation of friendship. And I mean, Pastor Andre spoke about this as part of the Wisdom series. And one of the things that Miles Monroe always says is that you cannot cure, or marriage cannot cure any of your ailments, whether they are emotional or relational ailments. What marriage does is it exposes you. It exposes all the problems that you have. So if you think that you're going to enter into marriage to cure or solve some problems, you're going to have a little shock, because all it's going to do is just expose you. Even it's basically like a light shining into all the dark places. So before you enter into marriage, make sure that your friendships and your relationships, you're able to do that right, and that you are truly single in the essence of what singleness is, and you have that right intimate relationship with God. Because once you enter into marriage, you're exposing yourself to areas of your life that no other person can possibly see. So your husband or your wife will see parts of you that no one else has ever seen before. And you should be comfortable enough with someone else being able to see those places, and also take that part of you as their crisis. So marriage exposes, and before you enter into marriage, make sure that your singleness is managed while you're able to work on your friendships the right way. Cool. Daniel, thank you so much for this. Can you pray or close it off?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for coming. From system member to 28. But thank you so much. I hope you have found this helpful. And I think relationship conversation is something we should be having often. While we wait, we learn, and learning from the experience of people who have, already walked the journey we are planning to walk. Thank you so much, DC, for joining. Thank you so much, everyone. Chanel and all the leaders of Connect groups, thank you so much for sending the information across. Thank you. All right, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you, Lord, for this amazing session. Thank you, Lord, because you even planned this ahead of time before we even think about it. And we thank you, Lord, perhaps it's just for one person here, who knows? And we thank you, Lord, for the conversation, the chat, and the learning, in all of these relationship things. Lord, we just give you all the glory, God. And I will pray for everybody, single, trusting you for a partner, trusting you for a marital partner, that, Lord, you just, reveal yourself to them, and you give them wisdom to choose right and to choose well. Lord, we pray for the services tomorrow at church, the regular service, that your grace and your peace and your presence will fill every home as we pray for the service tomorrow, God. Lord, we pray for all our leaders across the country, that your grace and your peace and your presence fill with them, Lord. Lord, we pray for strength as we keep, joining with you, keep learning from you, keep going with you. We pray for strength, we pray for grace, and we pray for wisdom, to live life and to turn in life. Lord, we thank you, and Lord, we love you. In Jesus' name, amen, amen, amen. Thank you so much, guys.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone.
Amen.
Have an amazing evening, and see you someday soon.
Guys, when is the next one?
And how's the lockdown going? Can we talk a little bit about that for 5 minutes?
Okay. The channel is still on.
Everyone's okay? Anyone needs help?
Yeah, I'm looking to meet someone, so can you offer some help?
During lockdown.
This is the best time. People are not busy.
Wow.
Now people can talk, hey?
Yeah.
Seriously, are we going to do another one, Nelly?
Oh, we must.
I was invited by Daniel, so Daniel would be the...
So Daniel, can you speak, please?
I don't know.
So how does everyone else feel?
Should definitely do another one. This was great.
Oh,
Yeah.
Manaka, you're here.
I'm here, guys. I'm here. Are you shocked because I've been quiet the whole
No, I
time?
thought maybe you just left your profile picture.
Wow.